The air on Virelon tasted of sterilized ozone and the faint, metallic tang of distant forges. Kael Drayen adjusted the collar of his tunic, the fabric shimmering with the subtle iridescence favored by Xylosian cultural attaches. A fabrication, of course, like the identity chip embedded beneath his skin. Like the carefully constructed biography detailing his supposed expertise in pre-imperial Azuri pottery. His true purpose was far less academic and infinitely more dangerous. He moved through the throng of delegates and officials crowding the grand atrium of the Imperial Archives complex. A river of silks, uniforms, and chitinous carapaces reflecting the cold, synthesized light filtering from the vaulted ceiling far above. Each step was measured, his gaze sweeping, cataloging exits, guard patrols, surveillance nodes disguised as aesthetic flourishes in the stark, imposing architecture. The Azuri, for all their claims of cultural enlightenment, built their sanctuaries like fortresses. His target lay deep within this complex, shielded by layers of security that would make a sector martial blanch, the Imperial Vault, and within it, the CEX Codeex, publicly lauded as the ultimate repository of galactic cultures, a tool to preserve the heritage of species absorbed into the ever-expanding Azuri Empire. Kael knew the truth. The Codex wasn't a preserver, it was an eraser, a weapon of cultural genocide capable of tailoring mimetic viruses to dismantle traditions, languages, beliefs, leaving behind compliant, hollowed-out populations ready for seamless integration. His mission, sanctioned by the fledgling human confederacy's most covert intelligence branch, was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. Steal it. Replace it with the inert replica currently concealed in a null-field compartment within his diplomatic satchel. Get out. He presented his credentials at the first checkpoint, a shimmering energy field guarded by two imposing Azuri sentinels, their multifaceted eyes unblinking, their polished chrome armor gleaming. The scanner hummed, analyzing his biosignature, cross-referencing it with the meticulously forged Xylosian database entry. Kael kept his breathing even, projecting an air of mild scholarly impatience. A bead of sweat traced a path down his spine, cold against his skin despite the controlled climate. Seconds stretched into an eternity, then A chime soft and permissive. The energy field dissolved, Kael Drayen. One sentinel intoned, its voice a synthesized baritone lacking any inflection. Proceed to Orientation Chamber 7. Kael inclined his head slightly, a gesture practiced to mimic Xylosian deference. My gratitude. Sentinel. He walked on, the heavy doors hissing shut behind him, the weight of the deception pressing down on him. He navigated the designated corridors, his path ostensibly leading towards the orientation chambers where visiting dignitaries were briefed on archive protocols. But Kael's route deviated subtly, guided by schematics procured at immense cost and risk. He accessed a maintenance conduit hidden behind a holographic mural depicting the Azuri ascent from tribalism to starfaring dominance. The panel slid open silently, revealing a cramped, dusty shaft smelling of lubricant and stale air. He slipped inside, the panel closing behind him, plunging him into near darkness. He activated his optical enhancement, the world resolving into shades of infrared and low-light amplification. The conduit network was a labyrinth, but he had memorized the path. He moved quickly, silently, his specially dampened boots making no sound on the grated floor. He bypassed pressure plates, deactivated laser grids using a multi-frequency jammer, and sliced through electronic locks with tools that were decidedly not standard diplomatic issue. The air grew colder, the metallic tang stronger. He was getting closer. The vault was shielded not just by guards and energy fields, but by layers of counterintelligence, psych dampeners, and temporal stasis fields on its inner sanctum. Getting in was only half the battle. He reached the final access junction, a heavy blast door sealed with a quantum entanglement lock. This was the crux. His decoy tools wouldn't work here. He attached a small device to the lock mechanism, a neural interface probe. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes, extending his own highly trained, illicitly augmented mental discipline towards the lock's intricate quantum matrix. It felt like wading through solidified thought, a defense mechanism designed to repel unauthorized psychic intrusion. He pushed gently, persuasively, weaving his mental signature into the patterns. Mimicking the authorization codes he'd studied from compromised Azuri security protocols, the resistance was immense, a crushing cognitive weight. Doubt flickered. What if the intel was wrong? What if the psychic defenses had been upgraded? Failure meant discovery, torture, the probable annihilation of the human outpost he was trying to protect. He pushed harder, pouring his concentration into the effort. Sweat beading on his forehead. A faint click echoed in his mind, a sense of tumblers falling into place within the quantum foam. The blast door hissed, parting slowly to reveal the sterile, white chamber beyond. The Imperial Vault. It wasn't large, but the sense of contained power was overwhelming. Pedestals rose from the floor, each displaying an artifact under its own shimmering stasis field. Most were genuine cultural treasures, spoils of war or coerced acquisition. But in the center, on a dais of polished obsidian, rested the CEX Codeex. It didn't look like a weapon. It resembled an intricate astrolabe crafted from a swirling, opalescent material, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe just beyond the edge of perception. The air around it hummed with a low, subliminal frequency that made his teeth ache. He approached cautiously, his instruments confirming the area was clear of immediate biological threats, though sensor ghosts flickered at the edge of his scanner's range. He disabled the stasis field around the codex with a precisely modulated energy pulse. The humming intensified, a wave of psychic pressure washing over him, filled with the faint, discordant echoes of dead languages and forgotten gods. This was it. The tool of oblivion. He worked quickly, his hands steady despite the tremor deep within him. He opened his satchel, removing the replica, identical in appearance, inert in function. With infinite care, he lifted the real codex from its dais. It felt strangely cold, unnervingly light, yet dense with latent energy. The psychic echoes intensified, whispers of vanished cultures clawing at the edges of his consciousness. He fought them back, focusing on the task. He placed the codex into the null field compartment and positioned the replica on the obsidian dais. He reactivated the stasis field. To any cursory inspection, nothing had changed. Then, the alarms blared. Not the loud, shrieking sirens he'd expected, but a low, pervasive thrum that vibrated through the deck plating, accompanied by flashing crimson emergency lights. A subtle sensor, perhaps tripped by the null field signature or the momentary disruption of the stasis field. He hadn't been perfect. Doors slammed shut around the vault complex. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor outside the blast door he'd mentally cracked. An intruder detected in Vault Sector Gamma, a synthesized voice announced. Devoid of panic, full of deadly certainty. Seal all access points. Deploy sterilization units. Kael sprinted back towards the maintenance conduit, the satchel containing the real codex bumping against his hip. The blast door was already closing. He put on a burst of speed, diving through the narrowing gap just as it slammed shut with a deafening clang. He didn't wait. Plunging back into the dusty darkness of the conduit network, the alarms echoing behind him. He had the package, but Vireya was now a cage, and the Azuri were closing in. His escape route involved reaching a specific ventilation shaft leading to the exterior, where a micro shuttle awaited, cloaked and ready for a high-velocity atmospheric burn, to a waiting jump ship hidden in the system's asteroid belt. It was a long shot, now made longer. He could hear the telltale whine of Azuri hunter-seeker drones approaching within the conduit system. The chase was on, deep within the Imperial spire that dominated Vireya's capital cityscape. Emperor Kezan slammed a fist onto the obsidian surface of his command console. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing the sealed vault. The alert notifications, the absence of the codex from its central pedestal. His regal composure, usually as immutable as carved stone, had fractured, revealing the cold fury beneath. His segmented mandibles clicked sharply, a sound that made his attending advisors flinch. "Explain this," he hissed, his voice low and resonant with barely contained rage. "Explain how the most secure facility in the Empire, guarding our most valuable asset, was breached." An admiral, resplendent in silver and gray uniform, stammered, "Your Magnificence." The intruder bypassed multiple security layers, sophisticated infiltration techniques, possibly Omega-level clearance codes, illegally obtained. The identity used was a Xylosian attaché, confirmed false, irrelevant. Kezan snapped, turning his multifaceted eyes towards the trembling officer. "The codex is gone, replaced by a worthless imitation. This is not merely theft. It is an act of war, a declaration against the very stability and cultural purity we strive to maintain." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled council. "Someone believes they can defy the Azuri Empire. They believe they can steal our future." He straightened, his towering form radiating menace. "They are mistaken. Find me the thief, find me the codex, and bring them both to me. I want to look into the eyes of this fool before I extinguish their existence and reclaim what is ours." A figure stepped forward from the shadows at the edge of the throne room, clad in form-fitting, midnight black armor that seemed to absorb the light. She moved with a predatory grace that silenced the room. Her features were sharp, classic Azuri, but honed to an edge of lethal focus. Her eyes, a piercing shade of violet, held no warmth, only unwavering resolve. This was Vireya, commander of the Emperor's shadow cadre, his most trusted hunter, retriever of lost secrets, and eliminator of inconvenient truths. "Your Magnificence." Vireya's voice was calm, controlled, a counterpoint to the Emperor's fury. "Give me the mission parameters. I will recover the codex." Kezan turned to her, a flicker of approval in his gaze. "Vireya, as efficient as ever." He gestured towards a holographic display showing Kael's fabricated Xylosian profile. "The thief used this identity. Male, humanoid, likely, highly skilled in covert operations and technological circumvention, possibly augmented. He escaped the vault perimeter, but is believed still contained within the primary exclusion zone around the archives complex. Ground sweeps and atmospheric patrols are underway. Containment is insufficient," Vireya stated flatly. "He will attempt extraction. Standard protocols predict escape via unregistered short-range transport to an orbital jump point." "Precisely," Kezan agreed. "Your mission is absolute priority. Utilize any resources necessary. Imperial fleet elements are at your disposal. Track him, corner him, retrieve the codex undamaged. The thief is secondary. Bring him alive if convenient for interrogation. Otherwise, Dispose of him. Let his fate serve as a warning. Understood, Your Magnificence. Vireya bowed crisply, her violet eyes fixed on Kael's image. She analyzed the sparse data, the escape trajectory, the methods used. This wasn't random piracy. This was targeted, professional, likely state-sponsored. The implications were unsettling, but irrelevant to her task. Duty was her creed. The Empire her faith. She would hunt this ghost, run him to ground, and restore the Emperor's property. Failure was not an option. She turned, her black armor whispering as she strode from the throne room, already calculating pursuit vectors, anticipating her quarry's desperate moves. The hunt had begun. Kael burst from the ventilation shaft onto a windswept external platform several hundred meters above Vireya's sprawling capital. The wind whipped at his torn attaché tunic, carrying the scent of alien rain and ionized gases. Below, the city lights glittered like fallen stars. Above, the twin moons cast an eerie glow through the breaking clouds. His micro shuttle, codenamed Nightfall, should have been hovering right here, its cloaking field engaged. It wasn't. Instead, the platform was bathed in the sweeping searchlights of Azuri atmospheric patrol craft. Their engines whined ominously, closing in. His comm implant chirped. A frantic, encrypted burst from his pilot. Kael, ambushed. Multiple fighters, heavy damage. Can't maintain position. Trying to, the signal cut out. Replaced by static compromised. Trapped. He swore under his breath, scanning the platform. No cover. The patrols were vectoring directly towards him. He could hear the whine of repulsor lifts growing louder. He had seconds. He sprinted towards the edge of the platform. It was a suicidal drop to the streets below. But there was a maintenance gantry running along the underside, barely visible in the gloom. A desperate gamble. He leaped, twisting in midair, his augmented reflexes allowing him to grab the cold, slick metal of the gantry just as plasma bolts sizzled through the air where he had been standing. He scrambled onto the narrow walkway, pressing himself flat against the underside of the platform structure. Searchlights swept past, momentarily blinding him. He could hear the patrols hovering directly overhead, their sensors likely probing the structure. He needed to move, find another way down, another escape route. The Codex felt like a lead weight in his satchel now, a beacon drawing imminent death. He began edging along the gantry, hand over hand, the wind threatening to tear him loose. Far below, the city seemed an indifferent ocean of light and shadow. Vireya stood on the bridge of the Silent Claw, her personal rapid response vessel, a sleek, blade-like ship designed for pursuit and interception. Sensor displays resolved the chaos around the archives complex. "Report," she commanded, her voice cutting through the low hum of the bridge. "Commander," a tactical officer replied, his chitinous fingers flying over a console. "Target sighted exiting ventilation shaft 7 Gamma onto platform Delta 9. Extraction vehicle engaged and neutralized. Target evaded initial capture. Currently located on the underside gantry of platform Delta 9. Atmospheric patrols converging." Vireya studied the tactical display. Kael's flickering life sign marker a tiny spark against the massive structure. He was resourceful. She'd give him that. But cornered. Maintain sensor lock. All units, hold firing positions, disable. Do not destroy. I want the Codex intact. Deploy ground intercept teams to secure levels below the platform. Box him in. She watched the marker move slowly along the gantry. He wouldn't surrender. His actions bespoke desperation, but also skill. This was no common thief. This was an operative. But whose? Track all unauthorized ship movements within the system. Scan for cloaked vessels near potential jump points. The thief might be alone now, but his support wouldn't abandon the prize easily. Kael reached a vertical support strut and began his descent, using integrated climbing grips in his gloves and boots. The patrols still swept the platform above, seemingly unaware of his new position. He moved down level by level, the wind whistling past him. He needed to reach the lower city levels, disappear into the crowds, find a way to contact Confederacy Command for an emergency extraction. Assuming they even knew he was compromised, it felt hopeless. He was one man against an imperial world. Suddenly, a new sound reached him, distinct from the whine of the patrols, a high-pitched, rapidly approaching engine noise. Not Azuri tech, something smaller, faster. A speeder bike shot out from between two towering skyscrapers, banking hard towards his position. A lone figure was aboard, clad in scavenger gear, goggles obscuring their face. Plasma bolts erupted from the speeder's underbelly, not aimed at him, but at the Azuri patrol craft circling above. The shots were surprisingly accurate, forcing one patrol to veer sharply, its searchlight momentarily swinging away. Need a lift-off-worlder. A rough, electronically filtered voice crackled over a localized frequency Kael's implant picked up. The speeder swooped down, hovering precariously close to the strut Kael clung to. Quickly now, before they realize who I'm shooting at. Kael didn't hesitate. Azuri capture meant failure and death. This unknown offered a sliver of hope. He pushed off the strut, landing awkwardly on the back of the speeder bike. "Go!" he yelled over the wind and engine noise. The pilot gunned the engine, the speeder accelerating violently, weaving through the architectural canyons of Vireya's lower city, leaving the confused Azuri patrols behind for the moment. Plasma fire still stitched the air behind them as more patrols joined the chase. "Who are you?" Kael shouted, clinging on as the pilot executed impossible maneuvers. "Someone who doesn't like Imperials," the voice crackled back. "Name's Jax. I make a living skimming the edges. Saw you were in a tight spot. Looked like more fun than scavenging capacitor banks tonight." Jax laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "What did you steal that got the Emperor's finest so riled up?" "Something valuable," Kael replied evasively, tightening his grip on the satchel. He didn't trust Jack's docs, couldn't afford to. But for now, Jax was his only way out of the immediate firestorm. The chase continued, plunging deeper into the neon-lit, rain-slicked depths of Vireya's underbelly, a place far removed from the sterile grandeur of the Imperial archives. Vireya, aboard the Silent Claw, watched the speeder bike's erratic energy signature disappearing into the dense sensor clutter of the lower city. Her expression remained impassive, but her violet eyes narrowed. Ground teams were already being redirected. The hunt was far from over. It had merely changed terrain. The speeder bike, battered and smoking slightly, skidded to a halt in a darkened alleyway, reeking of stale refuse and chemical runoff. Rain slicked the grimy Duracrete walls, reflecting the flickering neon signs from the street beyond. Jax cut the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the drip of water and the distant city hum. "End of the line for this heap," Jax grunted, pulling off the goggles. The face revealed was weathered, human, with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. "Lost most of the patrols in the Market District traffic maze, but they'll be sector scanning soon. We need to ditch this ride and disappear." Kael slid off the bike, his muscles aching from the tense ride and the earlier exertions. "My thanks. Jax, you saved my skin." Jax shrugged, pulling a dirty tarp over the speeder. "Don't mention it, yet. Favors have costs in this part of town. What's in the bag that's worth an Imperial fleet lockdown?" Jax's eyes lingered on Kael's satchel. Kael met the gaze steadily. "Something the Empire wants back badly. something they shouldn't have. He decided on partial honesty. It's an artifact. They claim it preserves culture. It doesn't. Jax whistled softly. Playing high-stakes games. Are we? Figures. You don't look like you belong down here. Jax looked him up and down, noting the remnants of the expensive tunic, the underlying physique that spoke of training. You need off-world. Badly. That was the original plan, Kael admitted wryly. My transport was intercepted. Yeah, saw the fireworks, Jax said. Extraction's tricky now. Every port is locked down tighter than a miser's fist. Air traffic control is crawling with Imperial Navy. Unless you got a private cloaked yacht waiting, you're grounded. Kael considered his options. He needed a secure location, time to think, a way to contact his people. Do you know a place? Somewhere quiet, somewhere I can access communications. Jax hesitated, then nodded slowly. Maybe. Got a bolt hole nearby. Not fancy, but it's off the Imperial grid. Secure comms. That's harder, risky, but possible. It'll cost you. How much? Let's start with what's really in the bag, Jax said, gesturing again towards the satchel. And then we'll talk long-term payment. Kael knew he couldn't reveal the Codex. Not yet. It's data. Proof of Imperial crimes masked as cultural preservation. Sensitive. Dangerous. Jax chewed on this, then gave a curt nod. All right. Data. Keep your secrets for now. Follow me. Stay close. And try not to look like you just robbed the Emperor's private museum. Jax led the way out of the alley, melting into the flow of beings crowding the narrow, rain-lashed street. Hooded figures, cybernetically augmented dockworkers, alien merchants hawking glowing fungi, the vibrant, chaotic pulse of Virelon's underside. Kael pulled up the collar of his ruined tunic, trying to blend in, acutely aware of the priceless, deadly artifact he carried, and the relentless hunter undoubtedly closing in. Meanwhile, Vireya coordinated the search grid from the Silent Claw, now hovering discreetly within the upper atmospheric layers, masked by civilian traffic transponders. Ground units were sweeping the lower sectors, deploying sensor drones, checking identities. Status report, she demanded. Commander, the target speeder has been located, abandoned in Sector Kappa 7, the tactical officer reported. No sign of the occupants. Heat signatures are cold. Ground teams are expanding the search perimeter. Facial recognition scans are active citywide, cross-referenced with the false attaché profile. He has assistance, Vireya stated, observing the data streams. The speeder pilot, Jax, was a known low-level operative in the city's underworld, specializing in smuggling and information brokering. Not typically someone who engaged Imperial patrols directly. Focus resources on Sector Kappa 7 and surrounding districts. Interface with local informants. Offer rewards. Standard acquisition of stolen Imperial property protocols. Maximum discretion. She zoomed in on the map, highlighting potential escape routes. Known underworld havens. Black market tech dealers. Jax wouldn't shelter the thief for free, or for long. They needed something. Off-world transport, untraceable communications. Supplies. Each need created a potential intercept point. Analyze Jax's known associates and recent contacts. Find the connection. Her violet eyes scanned the complex web of data, searching for the single thread that would lead her to her quarry. Patience and precision. The cornered animal was hiding, but it would have to move eventually. And when it did, she would be waiting. Jax's bolt hole was a cramped series of rooms carved out behind a failing hydroponics shop, the air thick with the smell of mildew and artificial nutrient paste. Rusted pipes lined the low ceiling, dripping occasionally into buckets placed strategically on the floor. It was squalid, but shielded from casual scans. Home sweet home. Jax announced with a distinct lack of enthusiasm, activating a flickering light panel. Powers intermittent.coms are scrambled relay through 3 ghost networks, and the neighbors are mostly fungus farmers who keep to themselves. Safer than the streets. Anyway, Kael surveyed the space. A workbench cluttered with disassembled tech, a narrow bunk, a grimy food synthesizer. "It'll do," he said. "Thank you." "Jax, don't thank me. Pay me," Jax retorted, slumping onto a stool. "First installment, info. Who are you really, and why risk vaporizing yourself for some data?" Kael weighed his options again. Jax had taken a significant risk. Some level of trust was necessary. "My name is Kael Drayen. I work for interests that oppose unchecked imperial expansion. The data I carry isn't just information. It's the control mechanism for an Azuri artifact called the CEX Codeex. They claim it preserves culture, but it's designed to erase it. Genocide on a mimetic level." Jax's eyes widened slightly. "Codex." Heard whispers. Thought it was just archive tech. The scavenger leaned forward. "Erasure, like wiping out a whole species' identity." "Exactly," Kael confirmed. "Language, history, religion, art, everything that makes them unique. Leaving behind emptiness, compliance." He saw understanding and a flicker of fear dawn in Jax's eyes. "The Emperor plans to use it soon." Jax let out a long, low whistle. Okay, that's bigger than stolen data. A lot bigger. No wonder they sent the Shadow Cadre after you." "Shadow Cadre?" Kael asked, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. "Commander Vireya," Jax said grimly. "The Emperor's personal ghost never fails. If she's hunting you, this just got 10 times harder. She's relentless and smart." Jax rubbed a hand over tired eyes. "Right. New plan. We can't stay here long. Vireya's people will be shaking down every informant in the sector. We need to get you off Virelon. But using standard channels is suicide now." "Is there any other way?" Kael pressed. "Irregular transport. Smugglers willing to risk an Imperial blockade." Jax thought for a moment, tapping fingers on the workbench. "There are always smugglers. But taking on Imperial Navy for one passenger, carrying something the Emperor himself wants, the price would be astronomical. And the risk. Most wouldn't touch it. There's one possibility. Risky, crazy, even. A freighter captain owes me big. Runs the Nebula Rat. Hauls unstable ores out of the Ghost Nebula region. Skirts Imperial patrols regularly. Might be willing, for the right price." "What price?" "Everything you have," Jax said bluntly. "And probably a lien on your soul. Plus, we need to get to the orbital docks where he makes his clandestine pickups. That means getting through the city checkpoints and the dock security cordon." "How do we do that?" Kael asked, the magnitude of the challenge settling upon him. "Stealth, misdirection, and maybe a little bit of chaos." Jax grinned, a spark of the earlier recklessness returning. "Got some old tech here. Might be able to whip up a localized sensor jammer, maybe spoof some ID codes. It's old school, but sometimes that slips under their high-tech nets." Jax began rummaging through piles of components. "While I work on this, you need to access those secure comms you mentioned. Contact your people. Tell them you have the package, but you're stranded. Maybe they can arrange a diversion, something to pull Vireya's attention away." Jax pointed to a battered console in the corner. "That's the relay access. Use encryption protocol Obsidian 7 or higher. Anything less, assume it's monitored. And be quick. Every transmission is a risk." Kael nodded, moving to the console. He wiped sweat from his brow. The reality of his situation starkly clear. He had the Codex, the weapon of oblivion. But he was trapped on an enemy world, hunted by the Empire's best, relying on a cynical scavenger. With his only hope a desperate run to a smuggler's ship, he initiated the encryption sequence, his fingers flying across the keypad, composing the brief, urgent message to Confederacy Command. Send reinforcements. Initiate diversionary tactics. Extraction required. Target acquired. Location, Vireya. Status, compromised. Hunted. Praying the message would get through. Praying it wasn't already too late. The low thrum of the city outside seemed to pulse with unseen threats, and the silence in the bolt hole felt heavy with the weight of impending conflict. Vireya stood before a holographic projection of Vireya's lower city grid. Red markers indicated confirmed sightings and sensor sweeps by her ground teams. Sector Kappa 7 remained the focus. Report on Jax, she commanded. Informants confirmed Jax has gone to ground. An intelligence officer replied. No contact through usual channels. Known associates claim ignorance. Financial accounts show no unusual activity. However, analysis of deep network traffic detected a heavily encrypted burst transmission originating from the approximate location of Jax's suspected bolt hole moments ago. Protocol Obsidian 7. Vireya's lips thinned. Obsidian 7. High-level Confederacy encryption. Confirmation. The thief was indeed a state agent, and he was calling for help. Triangulate the signal source precisely. Deploy tactical teams. Subdue and capture. Prioritize the artifact. Lethal force authorized if recovery is jeopardized. Commander. The tactical officer interjected. Signal originated from sub-level 3. Adjacent hydroponics bay Kilo. Teams are en route. Estimated arrival, 7 minutes. Vireya watched the tactical display. Holographic soldiers converging on the target location. 7 minutes. Enough time for the thief and his accomplice to realize they were exposed. Perhaps enough time to flee. Alert all checkpoint units citywide. Increase scrutiny. Monitor all transit networks. They will attempt to move. She considered the timing. The transmission indicated desperation. They likely had an escape plan, however fragile. The docks. An illegal spaceport. Focus aerial surveillance on routes leading towards orbital cargo facilities Alpha through Zeta. Deploy Silent Claw interceptors to monitor potential low-orbit launch vectors. She would cut off every path. There would be no escape. The console in Jax's bolt hole suddenly flashed red, emitting a piercing electronic squeal. "Scramble alert!" Jax yelled, dropping a half-assembled jammer. They traced the signal. Imperial TAC teams incoming. Grab the bag. We gotta move. Now. Kael didn't need telling twice. He snatched the satchel containing the Codex as Jax grabbed a heavy pulse rifle from under the bunk and slung a bag of tools and makeshift explosives over one shoulder. "Which way?" Kael demanded. "Not the way we came in," Jax said, kicking open a rusted floor grate that Kael hadn't noticed before. "Service tunnels, sewage conduits mostly. Smells like hell, but it'll take us under the main streets. Might give us a head start." A low boom echoed from the direction of the hydroponics shop, the sound of a breaching charge. "Move!" They plunged into the slimy darkness beneath the floor. Jax pulling the grate shut above them, just as heavy boot steps pounded into the room they had vacated. The tunnel was narrow, barely shoulder width, and filled with ankle-deep, foul-smelling water. They splashed forward, guided only by the weak beam of Jax's helmet lamp cutting through the oppressive blackness. Distant shouts and the sound of weapons fire echoed from above. "How far to the docks?" Kael gasped, trying not to inhale the noxious fumes. "Too far on foot through this muck," Jax grunted, consulting a flickering wrist-mounted map. These tunnels should intersect with an old subterranean transit line about 2 kilometers east. Abandoned, but maybe still has power. If we can get one of the old maintenance carts running, it'll take us most of the way to the cargo port sector. If the line still works, if we can find a cart, if we can get past the patrols between here and there. Kael listed the obstacles, the odds feeling impossibly long. Yeah, lots of ifs. Jax acknowledged grimly. Better than waiting up there for Vireya's welcoming committee. Keep moving. They pushed onward through the reeking darkness, the sounds of pursuit fading slightly behind them, replaced by the gurgle of unseen water flows and the scuttling of subterranean creatures. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every drip of water sounding like an approaching footstep. Kael clutched the satchel tighter, the cold weight of the Codex a constant reminder of the stakes. Failure wasn't just his death, it was the potential erasure of countless lives, starting with his own people. That thought alone fueled his steps through the suffocating filth. Vireya received the update coolly. Target location secured. Premises empty. Signs of recent occupation. Evidence of communication attempt confirmed. Access to subterranean tunnel network discovered beneath floor panel. Heat signatures detected moving east within tunnel complex 7 Delta. Pursuit teams entering the tunnels. Commander, the tactical officer reported. But the environment is degrading sensor accuracy. Complex layout. Anticipated. Vireya replied calmly. She zoomed the tactical display onto the projected path of the fleeing signatures. They were heading towards the abandoned Metro Transit Line 4. Obvious. Predictable. Redirect ground units to secure all known access points and ventilation shafts for Transit Line 4 between Sectors Kappa 7 and Omega 12. The cargo port district. Deploy drone swarms into the transit tunnel itself. Flush them out. She anticipated their desperation, their reliance on predictable infrastructure. Let them think they had found a refuge. She would turn the entire transit line into a kill box. Her gaze remained fixed on the map, her mind already several steps ahead, tightening the net around her prey. The artifact would be hers. The air in the abandoned subway station was stale and thick with dust. Emergency lights flickered intermittently, casting long, dancing shadows across graffiti-covered walls and rusted platform edges. Kael and Jax emerged cautiously from a service conduit, weapons ready. The place felt like a tomb. Transit Line 4. Jax confirmed, wiping grime from a faded station map. Haven't used this route in years. Let's hope the maintenance track still has juice. They moved along the platform, their footsteps echoing eerily. They found what they were looking for near the end of the platform, a small, open-topped maintenance cart, surprisingly intact. Jax pried open a control panel, inspecting the wiring. Power conduits look okay. Might just need a bypass to the ignition. Jax began working quickly with tools from the bag, stripping wires, connecting terminals. Kael kept watch, peering down the dark maw of the tunnel stretching away from the station. He felt exposed. Too quiet. His combat senses screamed trap. How long? He urged Jax. Almost got it, Jax muttered, sparks flying from the connections. Just need to reroute the primary capacitor. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine emanated from deep within the tunnel. A tiny red light appeared, growing rapidly larger. Then another, and another. A swarm of them! Drones! Kael shouted, recognizing the signature of Imperial Seeker drones. They knew we'd come this way! Got it! Jax yelled as the cart's console flickered to life. Get in! Kael dove into the passenger seat as Jax slammed a lever forward. The cart lurched, its electric motor whining in protest, then slowly began to accelerate down the tracks. away from the station. The drone swarm surged out of the darkness behind them, agile, silent killers closing the distance rapidly. Small plasma bolts began to zip past the cart, impacting the tunnel walls in showers of sparks. "Faster!" Kael yelled, firing his own pulse pistol back at the pursuing swarm. The energy bolts dissipated harmlessly against the drone's miniature shields. "Giving it all she's got," Jax shouted over the rising wind and engine noise. The cart rattled violently, threatening to shake itself apart. These things are slow. The drones were gaining, forming an arc behind them, preparing for a coordinated attack. "Tunnel junction ahead," Jax pointed. "Two tracks diverge." "Which way?" Kael glanced at the satchel beside him. "The Codex. Vireya wanted it intact. Would she risk destroying it with overwhelming drone fire? Maybe not." A desperate idea formed. "Take the older branch, the one marked decommissioned service spur that leads to a dead end." "Collapsed sector," Jax protested. "Exactly. It looks like a trap we fell into," Kael reasoned quickly. "Maybe they'll hold back full force if they think they have us cornered, wanting the artifact undamaged." It was a thin hope, a psychological gamble against a ruthless opponent. Jax hesitated only a second, then wrenched the steering lever. The cart screeched onto the rusted auxiliary track, plunging into an even darker, narrower tunnel. The main swarm of drones followed, funneling into the confined space. Kael risked a look back. The drones were closer now, almost upon them. He could see their optical sensors glowing malevolently. He braced himself. Suddenly, several larger drones at the front of the swarm fired concentrated plasma bursts, not at the cart, but at the tunnel ceiling just ahead of them. Rock and duracrete exploded downwards. "Cave in!" Jack screamed, slamming on the brakes. The cart skidded wildly, throwing Kael against the side, before crashing into the pile of rubble blocking the tunnel. Dust and debris rained down. Silence. Apart from the settling dust and the low hum of the drones hovering just beyond the rockfall, their red lights illuminating the impassable barrier. They were trapped. On the silent claw, Vireya watched the tactical display dispassionately. Status: targets neutralized. Commander, the drone controller reported. Service Spur 4 Beta tunnel collapsed via tactical drone charges. Cart impacted debris field. No escape route. Heat signatures confirmed within the wreckage. Maintain position, Vireya ordered. Send in a retrieval team. Heavy armor support. Secure the artifact first, then the prisoners. She allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The chase through the tunnels was over. The human agent and his scavenger accomplice were pinned, awaiting collection. The Codex was as good as recovered. She turned her attention to broader concerns, reviewing security protocols at the orbital docks, ensuring no other surprises awaited. The operation was nearing its conclusion. Kael coughed, spitting out dust, his ears ringing from the explosion and crash. The cart was wedged firmly into the rock pile. The front was crumpled, but the passenger compartment seemed mostly intact. Jax groaned beside him, clutching an arm. "Think it's broken," Jax hissed through gritted teeth. "Let me see," Kael said, gently examining the injury. A nasty fracture, but no bone protruding. He found a med patch in his own gear and applied it carefully. That should stabilize it and dull the pain. "Thanks," Jax breathed, leaning back against the seat. "Well, some plan. Cornered ourselves nicely." Jax peered through the dusty front screen. The red lights of the drones hovered menacingly on the other side of the rockfall. What now? Wait for them to dig us out and offer tea. Kael scanned their surroundings. The tunnel here was old, reinforced with crumbling ferrocrete. But behind them, further down the dead-end spur, he noticed something, a faint rectangular outline on the tunnel wall, almost hidden by grime and decay. And an old access hatch. Maybe not, Kael said, pointing. Help me check that. They struggled out of the wrecked cart, Jax moving awkwardly. The hatch was heavy, rusted shut. Working together, using a pry bar from Jax's toolkit, they managed to force it open with a screech of tortured metal. It revealed another narrow service tunnel, completely dark, angling steeply downwards. Where does this go? Jax asked, peering into the darkness. No idea, Kael admitted. But anywhere is better than here, he checked his scanner. No power signatures, no life signs. It seemed truly abandoned. They think they have us trapped here. They'll send a heavily armed team, probably take their time setting up containment. This might buy us some time to find another way out, or lead us deeper into nowhere, Jax muttered, but followed Kael through the hatchway, pulling it partially closed behind them. They descended into the unknown darkness, leaving the wrecked cart and the patiently waiting Imperial drones behind, exchanging one trap for another, hoping this new path led towards freedom. However unlikely, the air in this new tunnel was cold, damp, and utterly still. They moved through the descending tunnel for what felt like hours, the only sound their own breathing and the drip of unseen water. The air grew progressively colder, carrying a faint scent of brine and decay. The floor leveled out, opening into a vast cavernous space. Kael swept his light beam across it. They were in some kind of colossal, ancient storm drain or effluent conduit, long abandoned. Massive pipes intersected the main tunnel, disappearing into darkness. A sluggish, dark river flowed through the center of the channel. Great, Jax sighed, leaning against the damp wall, cradling the injured arm. Now we're lost in Virelon's sewer system primeval. Any brilliant ideas? Agent Man. Kael consulted his scanner again. Still no power signatures nearby, but he detected faint, complex structural readings further downstream. And something else. A low, rhythmic vibration traveling through the floor, almost too subtle to feel. There's something ahead, he said. Machinery, maybe. And this conduit seems to be heading towards the old industrial sector, near the coast. Maybe it empties out into the ocean. Ocean discharge. Jax considered it. Could work. Imperial patrols are usually less concentrated over the open water, focused on the ports. But getting out there, suddenly, a proximity alert pinged on Kael's scanner. Multiple contacts, closing fast, from the direction they'd come. Not Imperial drones this time. The energy signatures were cruder, less uniform. Trouble, Kael whispered, pulling Jax behind a massive, rusting pipe junction. Someone else is down here. Figures emerged from the upstream darkness, moving stealthily through the gloom, their forms illuminated by chemical light sticks. They were rough-looking, heavily armed with mismatched weaponry, scavengers, tunnel dwellers, or perhaps something worse, mercenaries. There were at least a dozen of them, fanning out, clearly searching. Well, a harsh voice echoed in the cavern. Look what the tide dragged in. Heard on the whisper net, Jax was playing host to some high-value off-worlder carrying Imperial treasure. The leader, a burly figure with cybernetic eye gleaming red, grinned unpleasantly. Looks like the Imperials lost track of you. Lucky for us. Hand over the package, attaché. And maybe we let you and Jax crawl out of here. Jax cursed under breath. Grigor, tunnel boss, runs half the black market ops in this sector. Heard he put a bounty out. Kael knew they couldn't fight their way out. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and Jax was injured. Negotiation was unlikely to work with someone like Grigor. He needed a diversion. He scanned the cavern again. High above, near the ceiling, ran a series of maintenance catwalks, heavily corroded. and one of the large intersecting pipes near them seemed to be carrying pressurized fluid. Judging by the vibrations, the bag, Grigor repeated impatiently, gesturing with his heavy slug thrower. Now, Kael held up a hand. All right, no need for trouble. He slowly reached for the satchel, making eye contact with Jax and nodding subtly towards the pressurized pipe. Jax's eyes widened slightly in understanding. As Kael pretended to fumble with the satchel's clasp, Jax, using the good arm, yanked a small remote detonator from the tool bag and triggered it, a shaped charge, previously planted by Jax on the pipe junction as a contingency, exploded with a deafening roar. The pipe ruptured, spewing high pressure, noxious effluent directly towards Grigor and his crew. Simultaneously, Kael fired his pulse pistol, not at the mercs, but at the corroded supports of the catwalk directly above them. With a groan of tortured metal, a section of the catwalk tore loose, crashing down amidst the confusion and the spray of sewage. Go! Kael yelled, grabbing Jax and pulling them towards the downstream tunnel as Grigor's crew scattered, shouting curses, momentarily blinded and disorganized by the deluge and falling debris. They plunged back into the darkness, the sounds of sporadic weapons fire and angry shouts echoing behind them. They ran, splashing through the sluggish river, hoping the chaos they'd created bought them enough time to find a way out before Grigor regrouped, or before Vireya's forces inevitably picked up their trail again. Vireya frowned at the latest sensor reports. The heat signatures in the collapsed tunnel spur had vanished. A secondary access hatch, previously hidden by debris and sensor interference, had been discovered. Worse, seismic sensors had just registered a localized explosion deep within the old conduit system, Sector Epsilon 4, followed by unfiltered comm chatter reporting an altercation involving Grigor's scavenger crew and unknown hostiles. They evaded the trap, she stated, her voice dangerously quiet, and encountered local interference. She tapped commands into her console. Override local enforcement channels. Deploy elite ground units to Sector Epsilon 4. Converge on the source of the disturbance. Use sonic dampeners and thermal imaging. Ignore Grigor's crew, unless they interfere. Primary targets are Drayen and Jax. Retrieve the artifact. Her jaw tightened. The human agent was proving more resourceful and luckier than anticipated, relying on underworld figures, exploiting ancient infrastructure, but his luck was running out. The conduit system had limited exits, especially near the coast. She anticipated his next move, attempting to reach the ocean discharge. Deploy submersible drones to monitor all effluent outlets along the Sector Epsilon coastline. Alert coastal patrol craft. He will not reach open water. Every avenue of escape was being systematically closed. It was only a matter of time. Hours later, exhausted, soaked, and covered in grime, Kael and Jax stumbled out of the massive conduit outlet, hidden behind a curtain of artificial seaweed clinging to the base of Virelon's coastal seawall. The air tasted salty, stinging their lungs after the fetid atmosphere of the conduits. A perpetual, chemically induced twilight hung over the churning, polluted ocean. Automated barges moved sluggishly in the distance, heading towards the orbital cargo lifts. Made it, Jax gasped, slumping onto the slick rocks. Never thought I'd be happy to smell the sea vats. Jax looked at Kael. Your data is causing a lot of trouble, Agent Man. I know, Kael said grimly, scanning the coastline. No immediate sign of patrols, but he felt exposed under the vast, gloomy sky. We need to contact your smuggler friend. Now. Jax pulled out a heavily shielded, waterproof comm unit. All right. Praying the Nebula Rat is still in range and willing to listen. Jax keyed in a complex code sequence. Static hissed for a long moment, Then a gruff voice crackled through. Jax, that you? Thought you were Imperial fertilizer by now. Still kicking. Harker. Jax replied. Needed that favor. Big one. Passenger. High priority. Needs immediate evac. Destination. Nexus Prime. Payment guaranteed upon arrival. Generous. There was a pause. Nexus Prime. Near the contested border. And what's this high-priority nonsense? Heard chatter. Emperor's pet project went missing. Wouldn't have anything to do with that, would you? Just get us off this rock. Harker, Jax insisted. Name your price later. Can you make the pickup? Another pause. Longer this time. Kael held his breath. Risky, Harker grumbled. Blockades tight. Got Navy patrols crawling all over the orbital lanes. But my cargo scanners picked up an unscheduled meteor shower inbound. Heavy interference expected in about 30 standard minutes. Might provide enough cover for a quick atmospheric dip and retrieval. Coordinates. Jax relayed their position. 30 minutes. Harker, don't be late. We've got company inbound. I guarantee it. Yeah. Harker grumbled. Nebula rat out. The comm went dead. 30 minutes, Kael repeated, looking back towards the city. Far inland, he could see the faint lights of approaching aerial vehicles. Vireya's forces, undoubtedly. We need to find cover and hope Harker isn't just feeding us a line. They scrambled further along the rocky shoreline, seeking refuge in a cluster of eroded sea caves carved into the base of the wall. The polluted waves crashing nearby, masking their sounds, waiting, hoping. The satchel containing the codex felt heavier than ever. 30 minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity. The sounds of aerial patrols grew closer, their searchlights occasionally sweeping the dark water. Kael and Jax remained hidden deep within the sea cave, listening, watching the chrono display on Jax's comm unit tick down. Then, exactly on schedule, the sky began to shimmer. Not meteors, Kael realized, but some kind of widespread electromagnetic interference, likely generated by Harker's ship or an associate, disrupting local sensors. Almost simultaneously, a dark shape detached itself from the low clouds, descending rapidly towards the coordinates Jax had provided. It was a freighter, ugly and functional. Scarred from countless rough entries and exits, the Nebula Rat. A cargo ramp lowered as it hovered precariously close to the churning water's surface just beyond the rocks. That's our ride, Jax yelled, scrambling out of the cave. Come on! They sprinted across the slick rocks towards the hovering ship. Searchlights stabbed through the interference from the approaching Imperial patrols, catching them momentarily. Plasma bolts began to splash into the water around them. Hurry! Harker's voice boomed from the ship's external speakers. They reached the ramp, scrambling aboard just as the freighter's engines roared, lifting it rapidly away from the coastline. Kael looked back, seeing Azuri interceptors rising from the city, closing fast. The ramp retracted, sealing them inside the dimly lit, vibrating cargo bay, which smelled of ozone, engine oil, and strange alien spices. Strap yourselves in. Harker's voice crackled over the internal comm. Gonna be a bumpy ride punching through the blockade. Kael found securing straps on the bulkhead and buckled himself in next to Jax. The freighter shuddered violently as it accelerated, G-forces pressing them deep into their restraints. Warning klaxons blared, red lights flashed. Through a small viewport, Kael saw the streaks of energy weapons fire passing dangerously close. The ship banked sharply, groaned under the stress, then seemed to surge forward with incredible power. The vibrations lessened slightly. The attack seemed to have ceased. Made it through the primary cordon, Harker announced, his voice tight with relief. Jump drive charging. 5 minutes to Nexus Prime. Hope your credits are good. Jax. Kael finally allowed himself a small sigh of relief, leaning his head back against the bulkhead. They were off Vireya. They had the Codex. But he knew Vireya wouldn't give up. Nexus Prime was neutral territory, but hardly safe, and the Codex itself. Carrying it felt like holding a ticking bomb. The fight was far from over. It had just shifted to a new, perhaps even more dangerous, arena. Aboard the Silent Claw, Vireya watched the Nebula Rat's energy signature flare as it jumped to hyperspace, vanishing from her tactical display. The atmospheric interference cleared, revealing the empty patch of sky where the smuggler ship had been. Her ground teams arrived at the sea cave moments too late. "Report," she commanded, her voice betraying no emotion. Targets escaped aboard freighter identified as Nebula Rat, registered to independent trader Harker. The tactical officer stated. Jump trajectory confirmed. Destination Nexus Prime. Vireya stared at the coordinates. Nexus Prime, a chaotic hub of trade, intrigue, and questionable allegiances located near the volatile border between the Empire and the Confederacy. A logical destination for someone seeking anonymity or attempting to hand off stolen goods. Inform Imperial authorities on Nexus Prime. Increase surveillance at all docking ports. Place a priority. Alert on Harker and his vessel. And relay my departure coordinates. Set course for Nexus Prime. Maximum speed. She turned away from the display. The human agent, Drayen, had been lucky. Twice. There would not be a third time. Her hunt would continue on the neon-lit, treacherous streets of the station. She would corner him there, retrieve the Codex, and fulfill her duty to the Emperor. The fate of the artifact, and the future it represented, demanded nothing less. Nexus Prime Station hummed with the discordant symphony of 1,000 languages, engine whines, and marketplace bartering. Light from garish holographic advertisements washed over crowded corridors filled with beings from every corner of the known galaxy. The air was thick with the smells of exotic foods, recycled oxygen, and unidentifiable alien sweat. Kael, now clad in inconspicuous spacer's fatigues acquired from Harker's limited stores, moved through the throng, keeping Jax, whose arm was now in a proper sling, close beside him. The satchel containing the Codex was slung across his chest, hidden beneath a heavy canvas jacket. Harker had dropped them at a disused cargo airlock. Accepting a hefty down payment in untraceable cryptocurrency Kael had access to, with the promise of more upon Kael reaching his Confederacy contacts. The smuggler hadn't asked too many questions after seeing the state of his ship's hull plating from the escape. Clearly eager to disappear before Imperial agents on the station connected the dots. "All right," Jax muttered, wincing as someone jostled the injured arm. "We're here. Now what? This place is crawling with spies, bounty hunters, and probably Imperial observers keeping an eye out for us. We need a secure location," Kael said, scanning the crowds, noting the occasional glimpse of uniforms or armor that hinted at various factional security forces, including Azuri patrols operating under station agreements. "Somewhere off the main concourses, and I need to make contact." "Got a name?" Jax asked. Kael nodded. "Nerl? Counselor Nerl. Supposedly maintains a safe house here for Confederacy assets and sympathizers." The intelligence briefing had been sparse, mentioning Nerl as a high-ranking Azuri official who had quietly dissented against the Emperor's increasingly hardline policies, living in self-imposed exile on Nexus Prime. Risky contact, but potentially their best source of aid and information. Nerl. Jax raised an eyebrow, heard the name. Azuri nobility. Old family. Rumored to be out of favor with the Emperor. Finding him won't be easy. People like that don't advertise. My briefing included a recognition phrase and a potential contact point, an antiquarian bookshop in the old sector, Temporal Tomes. Kael explained. We head there first. They navigated the labyrinthine station, moving away from the brightly lit central hubs into the dimmer, narrower corridors of the older residential and commercial sectors. Temporal Tomes was tucked away on a quiet side street, its windows filled with dusty data slates and actual bound paper books, a rarity in this age. An elderly, frail-looking Azuri with clouded eye lenses sat behind a cluttered counter, seemingly dozing. Kael approached cautiously. "Excuse me," he began, pitching his voice low. "I was told I might find a rare edition here. Reflections on the first expansion wars." That was the first part of the phrase. The bookseller opened one eye slightly, peering at Kael. Reflections. Many reflections in those times. Few accurate. The Azuri paused. "Were you perhaps interested in the passages concerning the lost Cathar civilization?" The second part, confirmation. Kael felt a surge of relief. Their sudden decline has always been puzzling. "I seek clarity." The final part of the phrase. The bookseller sighed, slowly rising. "Clarity is a rare commodity. Follow me." He led them through a curtained doorway at the back of the shop into a small, dimly lit storeroom stacked high with ancient texts. He pressed a sequence of seemingly random books on one shelf. A section of the wall slid silently inwards, revealing a hidden elevator. "The counselor expects you. He was alerted to your arrival." The bookseller gestured towards the elevator. "Go quickly. Eyes are everywhere on Nexus Prime." The elevator descended smoothly, opening into a surprisingly spacious, elegantly furnished suite. Clean lines, tasteful Azuri art, shielded viewports showing the star-dusted void outside the station. Standing by one viewport, looking out, was an Azuri whose bearing radiated quiet authority despite his civilian attire. He turned as they entered, his features sharp, intelligent, his eyes holding a deep weariness. "Agent Drayen, I presume," Counselor Nerl said, his voice calm and measured. "And this must be Jax. Welcome. Please, make yourselves comfortable. You appear to have had a difficult journey." Counselor Nerl, Kael acknowledged, relaxing slightly but still wary. "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice." "Your mission precedes you," Nerl said, gesturing towards seats. "The theft of the Codex has sent tremors through the Empire. Emperor Kazan is displeased. He has dispatched Commander Vireya herself to retrieve it." Nerl's gaze was penetrating. "Tell me, Agent Drayen, do you truly understand what it is you carry?" "I know it's a weapon," Kael stated firmly. "Designed for cultural erasure. My government believes Kazan intends to deploy it against non-compliant worlds, starting with human settlements in the border regions." Nerl nodded slowly, his expression grim. "Your government is correct. Kazan sees cultural diversity as a disease, a weakness threatening imperial purity. He has become obsessed with the Codex, viewing it as the final solution. He believes activating its core protocols can enforce unity through oblivion." He looked directly at Kael. "But its history is even darker than you may realize. It wasn't merely designed for this purpose. It has been used before." Nerl activated a holographic display. Ancient fragmented images appeared. Alien beings Kael didn't recognize. Scenes of thriving cities turning to ruins. Symbols fading. Art dissolving into static. The Cathar, whose fate puzzled you, Agent, wiped clean by the Codex prototype centuries ago, during the first expansion, under a previous, equally ruthless emperor. Their history, their language, their very essence, gone, erased so thoroughly they are barely a footnote in imperial records. The Viridian Conclave, the singers of Cygnus X1, other victims lost to time. their extermination masked as natural decline or assimilation. Kael felt a chill despite the room's warmth. Jax listened intently, face pale. He would do that to us, to humans, Jax whispered, to anyone deemed impure or assistant. Nerl confirmed sadly. The current codex is far more powerful, refined over generations. Kazan believes it is his destiny to wield it, to forge a monolithic empire free of dissent or difference. He is preparing for a wide-scale activation, targeting buffer zone worlds first to test its efficacy before turning it on more established populations within the empire, whose loyalty he questions. Then we have to stop him, Kael said. Destroy the codex. Nerl shook his head. Destruction may be impossible without triggering catastrophic feedback. Its core matrix is tied into subspace frequencies we barely understand. And even if possible, simply destroying it might not be enough. Kazan's faction is powerful. They would simply build another or find other means. The truth must be exposed. The Empire itself must see what the Codex truly represents, what Kazan intends. How? Kael asked. We're fugitives. Vireya is hunting us. Vireya, Nerl mused, looking thoughtful. She is loyal, disciplined, utterly dedicated to the Empire as she understands it. But she is not without honor. She serves Kazan because she believes he represents the stability and order the Empire needs. She may not know the full history of the Codex or the true extent of Kazan's genocidal ambitions. He paused, considering, perhaps she is not the obstacle, but the key. Before Kael could question this cryptic statement, an alarm chimed softly from a panel on Nerl's desk. Security breach, Nerl announced, his voice suddenly tense. Perimeter sensors detect an unauthorized entry into the restricted levels. Elite signature. It's Vireya. She found us. Kael's hand instinctively went to the pulse pistol hidden under his jacket. Jax moved to stand, despite the injured arm. Nerl held up a hand. Panic will not help. My safe house has multiple escape routes, but she will have anticipated them. Direct confrontation is unwise. He looked at Kael, then at the satchel. Agent Drayen. Commander Vireya is here for the Codex. Perhaps it is time she learned exactly what she is fighting to reclaim. Vireya moved through the service corridors beneath Nerl's suspected safe house with silent, lethal efficiency. Her sensor suite had bypassed the outer security layers, confirming Drayen's and Jax's biosignatures within, along with Nerl's, the counselor, a known sympathizer. Though his direct involvement was unexpected and troubling, it escalated the situation from mere theft to potential sedition, involving high-ranking officials. Her orders were clear: retrieve the Codex. Nerl's fate and Drayen's would be determined later. She reached the final access point, the hidden elevator Kael and Jax had used. Bypassing its security protocols was trivial for her skills. The door slid open. She stepped into the elegantly appointed suite, her pulse rifle held at the ready, her violet eyes sweeping the room. Kael Drayen stood near the center, tense but defiant, his hand near a weapon. The scavenger Jax stood beside him, looking fearful but resolute, and Counselor Nerl stood near his desk, watching her with an unnerving calmness. The satchel, undoubtedly containing the Codex, was on a low table between them. Commander Vireya. Nerl greeted her evenly, an unexpected visit, though perhaps not entirely. Counselor Nerl, Vireya replied, her voice cold, professional. You are harboring a fugitive and consorting with an enemy agent in possession of stolen imperial property of the highest classification. Surrender the artifact and the prisoners immediately. Her rifle remained trained on Kael. The artifact is here, Commander. Kael spoke up, gesturing towards the satchel. But before you take it, you deserve to know what you're reclaiming for your emperor. Vireya's gaze flickered towards him. Then back to Neril. I follow the orders of Emperor Kazan. The nature of the artifact is irrelevant to my duty, is it? Neril interjected softly, activating the holographic display again. This time, however, he brought up different files, internal Imperial Archive records, heavily encrypted, detailing the Codex's deployment against the Cathar and other species. Casualty reports masked as cultural integration failures, directives signed by past emperors authorizing mimetic cleansing. Then, more recent files, Kazan's own strategic plans, targeting maps highlighting human border colonies and certain Azuri subcultures deemed problematic, logs detailing planned activation sequences. This is the truth of the Codex. Commander, not preservation, erasure, genocide. A truth Kazan has hidden from even his most loyal soldiers. This is the future he intends, the purity he seeks. Vireya watched the display, her expression unreadable behind her helmet's visor. She had heard rumors, whispers of the Codex's darker potential, dismissed them as dissident propaganda. But Neril's evidence was from the Imperial Archives themselves. Codes verified. Context undeniable. Kazan's directives, targeting Azuri populations, erasing their heritage. It went against everything she believed the Empire stood for. A flicker of doubt, small but potent, ignited within her disciplined mind. Fabrications, she stated, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. Dissident lies, are they? Kael challenged, stepping forward slightly, away from the satchel. Look at the targeting maps, Commander. Ask yourself why Kazan needs a tool of cultural preservation aimed at thriving human colonies. Ask yourself why he needs it, aimed at loyal Azuri citizens whose only crime is maintaining ancient traditions he dislikes. He met her gaze unflinchingly. I stole the Codex to stop a genocide. What is your reason for wanting it back? Vireya felt her certainty wavering. The evidence Neril presented, combined with Drayen's conviction, painted a disturbing picture. Could the emperor she served, the symbol of imperial stability, truly be planning such atrocities? Could her loyalty be misplaced? The mission parameters were clear: retrieve the Codex. But the context was shattering. Her rifle remained pointed, but her finger hesitated on the trigger guard. Suddenly, the suite's main door exploded inwards. Not Vireya's doing. Figures clad in unfamiliar black armor, faces hidden by opaque visors, stormed into the room, firing stun bolts indiscriminately. Mercenaries, or perhaps another faction. Kael reacted instantly, diving for cover, pulling Jax with him. Neril ducked behind his desk. Vireya spun, engaging the new threat, her pulse rifle barking defiance. These weren't station security or standard Imperial troops. Their tactics were brutal, efficient. They were after the Codex. Kael returned fire from behind an overturned sofa, trying to protect the satchel. Jax, despite the injury, managed to fire a few shots with a sidearm before a stun bolt grazed him, sending him sprawling. The mercenaries pressed their attack, focusing fire on Vireya, recognizing her as the primary threat. She moved with incredible speed and precision, taking down 2 attackers, but she was outnumbered. A well-aimed shot struck her rifle, sending it spinning from her grasp. Another stun blast hit her shoulder, forcing her back against the wall. Momentarily disoriented, one of the mercenaries lunged for the satchel containing the Codex. Kael saw it happening. He couldn't let them take it. Without thinking, he pushed himself away from cover, intercepting the mercenary, tackling him low. They crashed to the floor. Kael felt a searing pain in his side, as the mercenary discharged a vibroblade, catching him in a glancing blow before Kael subdued him with a swift strike to the head. Kael staggered to his feet, clutching his bleeding side, grabbing the satchel just as another mercenary leveled a weapon at him. Before the mercenary could fire, a single, precise plasma bolt struck him center mass. Vireya, weaponless but having drawn a concealed sidearm, stood framed in the ruined doorway, her stance deadly, her violet eyes blazing. She quickly dispatched the remaining two attackers with ruthless efficiency. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of damaged electronics and Kael's pained breathing. Vireya surveyed the scene, the downed mercenaries, Nerl cautiously emerging from behind his desk, Jack stirring groggily, and Kael leaning heavily against the wall, clutching the satchel, blood staining his jacket. Her gaze locked with Kael's. He had protected the artifact, yes, but he had also put himself directly in harm's way, seemingly to prevent it falling into unknown hands, even though she herself was his enemy. He had confirmed Nerl's evidence not just with words, but with action. Her internal conflict intensified. She walked towards Kael, her sidearm still held loosely at her side. He tensed, expecting the killing blow, or at least capture. Instead, she stopped before him, her eyes searching his face, then glancing at the wound in his side. "Who were they?" she asked, her voice tight. "Don't know." Kael grunted, pain lancing through him. "Not Imperial." Nerl examined one of the downed mercenaries' insignias. Black Sun Syndicate. Hired muscle. Someone else wants the Codex. Perhaps a faction within the Empire who believes Kezan isn't ruthless enough, or an external power seeking to exploit the weapon. Vireya holstered her sidearm. Her gaze was fixed on the satchel Kael held, then back at the horrific data Nerl had shown her. Kezan's plans. The Cathar. Genocide. Her duty was to the Empire, but was Kezan the Empire? Was this monstrous plan truly its future? She looked at Kael, the human agent bleeding because he tried to stop it. She looked at Nerl, the respected counselor risking everything for his principles. Her lifelong certainty crumbled, replaced by a sickening realization. She had been serving a monster. Her loyalty had been blind. "Your wound needs attention," she said to Kael, her voice softer now, stripped of its earlier coldness. She turned to Nerl. "Counselor, the evidence you showed me, it is authentic." Nerl met her gaze steadily, completely, verified through multiple cross-references within the deepest archive levels. Kezan intends to proceed within weeks. Vireya closed her eyes for a brief moment, processing the enormity of the betrayal, her emperor, her mission, all built on a foundation of lies and planned atrocities. When she opened them again, the doubt was gone, replaced by a new, cold resolve. "The Emperor cannot be allowed to succeed," she stated quietly, but with absolute conviction. She looked at Kael, then at the Codex. This artifact must be neutralized. Its truth must be revealed. She had entered the room as the Emperor's hunter. She was leaving as his enemy. Her path forward was now intertwined with the very fugitive she had been sent to capture. The mission hadn't changed, she realized. Retrieve the Codex. But the objective was no longer to return it to Kezan, but to stop him, permanently. "First," Vireya stated, "practical once more. We need to get you patched up, Drayen, and we need to get off this station before more Black Sun arrive, or before Imperial security pieces together what happened here." She knelt beside Jax, quickly checking his condition. "He'll recover. Stun effects are temporary." She looked at Nerl. "Counselor, your safe house is compromised. Can you secure transport?" "Somewhere discreet." Nerl nodded grimly. "I anticipated this possibility. I have a small, unregistered courier vessel docked at a private berth. Shielded. Fast. It should get us clear of Nexus Prime's immediate control zone. He moved to another hidden panel, activating communication systems. But where do we go? Returning to Vireya is suicide. Confederacy space may not be safe if Kazan suspects their involvement. Kael, leaning heavily on Jax, who was now sitting up, managed a weak grin. I know a place, remote, uncharted by most, used as a deep cover rendezvous point sometimes. Planetoid designation RX-7, barren rock, thin atmosphere, but shielded from long-range scans by nebular interference. We can regroup there, figure out our next move. Vireya considered this. An unknown location gave them an advantage. Agreed. RX-7 Slur. Coordinate with Agent Drayen for the jump coordinates. She turned back to Kael, producing a compact medical kit from her armor's pouch. Hold still. That wound needs sealing before we move. As she efficiently cleaned and sealed the vibro blade cut on his side with a dermal regenerator, Kael watched her. The shift in her demeanor was profound. The icy Imperial hunter was gone, replaced by a focused, pragmatic warrior who had just made a life-altering decision. Their goals were now aligned, born from conflict and the revelation of a terrible truth. An uneasy alliance, perhaps, but an alliance nonetheless. We need more than just hiding, Vireya said, applying the final bandage. We need proof, undeniable proof, to show the Azuri people, the military, what Kazan plans. Neryl's data is compelling, but it was accessed through his private channels. We need direct access to the core Imperial archives on Vireya, the unredacted historical records, Kazan's unedited directives, something we can broadcast across the Empire. Kael stared at her. Go back to Vireya, after we just escaped. It's the heart of the Empire's information network, Vireya stated calmly. And ironically, it's the place they'd least expect us to return to. With my knowledge of security protocols and your infiltration skills, it's our best chance to acquire irrefutable evidence. Neryl looked grave. Returning to the capital world is incredibly dangerous. Commander, Kazan will have tightened security exponentially after the initial theft, which is precisely why a direct assault would fail, Vireya countered. But a surgical strike, leveraging my access codes, some of which may still be active or only require minor adjustments, combined with Drayen's unconventional methods, we might bypass the heightened security. We retrieve the data core containing the Codex history and Kazan's orders, then transmit it from a secure location. Jax, listening intently, shook his head. Sounds like a suicide mission inside a suicide mission. Perhaps, Vireya conceded. But doing nothing guarantees Kazan succeeds. Are we willing to accept that? She looked from Kael to Neryl to Jax. The choice hung heavy in the air. Kael thought of the human colonies targeted on Kazan's maps. He thought of the Cathar, erased from existence. He looked at Vireya, whose entire world had just been upended. Yet she was already planning the counterattack. No, Kael said finally, meeting Vireya's gaze. We're not willing to accept that. We go back to Vireya. Neryl sighed, a deep, troubled sound. If you are determined, then I will assist in any way I can from RX-7. I have contacts within the bureaucracy, within the military, who distrust Kazan. Perhaps they can provide support or create a diversion. Good. Vireya nodded. Let's move. The clock is ticking. They helped Jax to his feet and moved towards the hidden elevator, leaving the scene of the firefight and Vireya's former life behind. Kael carried the Codex, its cold weight a constant reminder of their perilous objective. They were now a fractured, unlikely team, a human spy, a disillusioned Imperial commander, a cynical scavenger, and an exiled counselor, united against the tyranny threatening to engulf the galaxy. Their destination, the lion's den itself. The journey to RX-7 was tense but uneventful. Neryl's courier ship was fast and slipped through Nexus Prime's sensor net without incident. The planetoid itself was as Kael described, a desolate ball of rock shrouded in swirling nebular gases that played havoc with sensors. They landed in a deep, shielded canyon where a small, prefabricated Confederacy listening post lay dormant, activated now by Kael's codes. It was basic, functional, providing shelter, breathable, and sophisticated communication gear. While Kael and Neryl established secure links and began analyzing the data Neryl had salvaged, trying to pinpoint the exact location of the unredacted Codex files within the labyrinthine Imperial archives. Vireya took charge of planning the infiltration. She spread holographic schematics of the archives complex across a table, far more detailed than the ones Kael had used previously, incorporating layers of security protocols, guard routines, and classified access points only someone with her clearance would know. Jax, his arm healing rapidly thanks to advanced medical supplies, proved surprisingly adept at understanding the technical aspects, offering insights into bypassing older, less documented security systems based on his underworld experience. The main vault security will have been tripled, Vireya pointed out, tracing lines on the hologram. Direct re-entry is impossible. But the archives are vast. There are tertiary data storage facilities, archival conduits, less guarded than the main vault, but still connected to the central core. She highlighted a specific sector. Sub-Archive Kappa contains older records, deemed less critical. Security is tight, but focused on physical access. Network security, however, potentially vulnerable if accessed physically from within